I have a question for you. Do you have a right to everything you want?
No, I want one of those!
Plonker, how much do you want for the golden goose?
They're not for sale.
Name your price.
She can't have one.
Who says I can't?
The man with a funny hat.
I want one! I want a golden goose!
We all look at Veruca and think she's pretty spoiled. The problem is, she's so used to getting everything she wants that now she thinks she has the right to everything. In the last episode, we talked about natural rights and entitlements. Here's another way of looking at these concepts. A natural right is something you have that cannot or should not be taken away from you. Freedom of speech, the right to self-defense, the right to freedom of conscience. These are all natural rights. You have them, and others are required to leave your right to these alone. People generally accept natural rights as fairly universal and applicable no matter what the cultural context. When someone, somewhere, is being denied their natural rights, we don't look at that and believe that they never had the right to begin with. We see it as a right that they are unjustly being deprived of. Entitlements, on the other hand, are very different. Entitlement is the right to receive some benefit or to be given something. Things like education, a house, or medical care. The thing is, entitlements are a lot more controversial for a very simple reason. Things you are given have to come from somewhere. I mean, that should be obvious, right? Houses don't grow on trees, education doesn't fall from the sky, healthcare certainly doesn't just magically appear. In order for you to have a right to these things, someone else is obliged to give them to you. People build houses, carpenters and electricians and plumbers and masons. They have knowledge, they have tools. They use their labor to create something. If you have a right to a house and you don't have one, then these people are required to provide you with one. Or a taxpayer is required to work and give his labor to buy you one.
Huh?
Understand, no one is saying you don't have the right to build your own house or earn money to pay someone else to build it. These are your natural, inalienable rights. But it's a whole different thing to say that just because you exist, you have a right to a house. And what if the house builders don't want their work taken from them in that way? If the society doesn't give them a choice, then really, it's pretty close to slavery.
When the master gives you something, you take it.
Those kinds of entitlements do get created though. Governments decide that society is obliged to provide something and an entitlement is born. In addition to the problem that these kinds of rights allow one person to demand something and government to take that by force, there's another problem: scarcity. As soon as we decide that everyone has a right to something like healthcare, the question is, how much healthcare? There's not an infinite amount of doctors or medical equipment or taxpayers. This means there's not an infinite amount of healthcare. At some point, a line has to be drawn. But where? It's easy to say that no one should be forced to die of cancer because they can't afford the treatment. But what about other stuff? Should one person be forced to give his labor to pay for someone else's Viagra?
This is Bob. Bob is doing well. Very well indeed.
How about to get that nasty wart removed? What if the wart isn't painful, only kind of scary looking? And speaking of scary looking, what about plastic surgery? It's not really as simple as just saying that we all have the right to healthcare, is it? What's worse, once the government gets involved in deciding what services do and don't get covered, even things like cancer treatments aren't guaranteed. Sometimes governments with national health care end up trying to figure out who has a better or worse chance of surviving, and they have to ration the cancer treatment based on that calculation. Is that really how you want things? When an economic system is allowed to function without too much interference, the system tends to regulate itself. People get paid for the work that they do, things are priced based on how much of that thing there is, and how much of that thing people want. The system works really well, but once you decide that everyone has a right to everything, things start to run out pretty quick. Free ice cream, free education, free healthcare, it's all the same thing. It all has to be created or paid for by someone. It's not free at all. Things you are given have to come from somewhere. Someday, maybe houses will grow on trees or healthcare will fall from the sky. In the meantime, here in the real world, passing a law making them a right doesn't make more of these things magically appear. In fact, usually it really messes things up.